Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. Today we are going to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars and the sheer fact that it sure seems like they have two potential future head coaches on their staff. Now, when Jaguars head coach Liam Coen started off his coaching tenure with the Jaguars by hiring first-time coordinators Anthony Campanile and offensive coordinator Grant Udinski, it was definitely a bit of a shock to the system. I think not just, for those following along in Jacksonville, but I think for those even nationally. There's just a lot of new. Liam Coen was a young first-year head coach on top of James Gladstone, young first-year general manager, Tony Roselli, first-year EVP, and then, Campanile and Grant Udinski, two guys who have never been coordinators, obviously at this level for Campanile and in general for Udinski. So I definitely felt like, and it was a bit of a roll of the dice for Coen. They did obviously talk to other people about joining the staff, experienced former head coaches who I think would balance out the kind of inexperience, etc. Ron Rivera, I reported during the, coaching staff search, came to Jacksonville, interviewed with them. Obviously went on to go ahead and lead the football operations in terms of the front office for Cal football. So, obviously hiring Udinski and Campanile, it was, high ceiling hires. Two young guys who seemingly had fascinating backgrounds. And fast forward to now, and the Jaguars are 10-4. Obviously, Liam Coen calls the plays on offense, but Grant Udinski, guys, he gets a lot of love in that building. And then obviously Anthony Campanile and what he's done with that defense. I said before the season, if Anthony Campanile made their defense an even average unit in year one, it would be a win. They were woeful in 2024. And I know they had the talent to obviously be much better than they were. But they had to make such a big leap this year. And they've made a massive one with them. You can argue top 10 to 12 unit in the NFL this year defensively. When you add all those things in, two young coordinators, team on the upswing, team with a lot of momentum, I think it's fair to say and assume that they are going to get some momentum when interviews begin here in several weeks for teams as they look for a new head coach. Whether it's this year, whether it's in the future, I'd imagine each gets at least interviews this year. And I'll preface this conversation with this. Me talking about Grant Udinski and Anthony Campanile as potential future head coaches. I did an article because I asked Eric Murray in his press conference this week, about Anthony Campanile and, why he thinks he'd make a good head coach. I've asked players the same about Grant Udinski in the locker room. Teams aren't hiring head coaches based on what they see from Jaguars on SI and my Twitter. I'd love to think they are, but it's not happening. The reason this conversation is even happening, the reason why they're being talked about in such a way is because those conversations are already happening in the NFL. It is no delaying it. There's no slowing it down. There's no, you can't keep Anthony Campanile and Grant Udinski secrets and shield them from the world by just not talking about them. The NFL knows who these guys are. There is already a definite interest when you speak to people around the NFL in both of these guys. And I think it's easy to see why in both cases. I mean, we'll start with Grant Udinski. Again, I know he doesn't call plays for the offense, and I think it was Jonathan Jones who pointed out that if he got hired this cycle, he'd be, or he is now, nearly a year younger than Sean McVay when he was hired. So maybe it is a bit ambitious to think that he will get a head coaching job after this season, but to think that he won't get interviews, I think, just doesn't make sense. I mean, look, first of all, the trends of not just head coaching hires, but the entire processes a lot of times have come down to who can develop quarterbacks and who has the best reputation with quarterbacks. I mean, even Liam Coen, obviously who he is as a leader, who he is as a person, who he is as a coach, offensive mind, all reasons why he got hired. But the proven fact that he can get production and develop the quarterback position is a big reason why he was on the Jaguars' radar and so high on their list. And that's why Grant Udinski, he falls into the same category. I mean, a guy who, he played defensive end at Towson. I believe that's where he went to school, but has worked closely with quarterbacks since his time with Kevin O'Connell, the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins had some good years there. Sam Darnold obviously had a fantastic year there. Kevin O'Connell has, really earned the reputation as kind of, the quarterback whisperer right now. Just the amount of guys who have stepped in for the Vikings and have had success at that position during his time there. The fact that Grant Udinski worked in such close proximity to him and to the quarterback position, you can't say enough about it. And obviously, like I've said to you guys on here, when we're at practice, we mostly see individual drills. I every week, for the last 2 years, I've uploaded a highlight clip from one practice of the week, normally the last one during training camp. I do it for all of them. But the parts during training camp that we're allowed to film are like stretches and individual drills. We see the rest of practice. During the regular season, we only see the stretches and individual drills for the most part. So I'm not showing anything that's, showing plays or team setting or anything like that. But when we're at practice, for the parts we view, he's pretty exclusively with the quarterbacks, works very closely with them. You can see how much of a hand that he has in the development of that room. I asked Trevor Lawrence about Udinski on Wednesday, and he gave a fantastic quote about how he's never really met anybody like Udinski and just how detailed and meticulous he is at the task on hand. And again, time with Kevin O'Connell, big plus, because that makes him Sean McVay adjacent. Time with Liam Coen, big plus. It makes him Sean McVay adjacent. So I expect him to get looks. And plus, he got interviewed by a ton of teams as an offensive coordinator candidate this past cycle. So, teams are already really high on this guy. He didn't call plays in Minnesota last year, and clearly a lot of teams were interested in talking to him about calling plays for them this season. So, on the other end, Campanile, as a football mind, first and foremost, some of the stuff he does on defense is just fantastic. Really good pressure looks. He's done a good job of building them gradually into a top run defense, despite, maybe not even having the most dominant set of run stoppers up front. A lot of players have gotten better in his scheme. I just, off the top of my head, Buster Brown, my mistake, Jarian Jones, Antonio Johnson. Devin Lloyd is obviously a big one. I think, Eric Armstead moving inside has played a big part in it, but he's been a good fit in the defense. Up and down, really. The Jaguars defense, it's guys playing really good football. And then you talk about the person. I told you guys this when he got hired. There's not anybody I talked to after camp got in the building and started, meeting players and talking with them. Nobody I talked to was anything but over the moon with the guy. Bill Sheridan had a great quote before the season. Their senior defensive assistant, longtime NFL and college defensive assistant, has ties with camp. He said, "I think the players have fallen for him, and they should." That says it all. Camp is just, and that has not been able to be said about all of the coaches that have been hired by the Jaguars since I've been covering them. There's some guys that pretty quickly after they got hired and met guys, I'd hear players be like, we'll see how it works out, but complete opposite with Campanile. And you talk to any player in that locker room, they love the guy, they'll fight for him, they'll go to war for him. And on top of all that, obviously, like I said, He's a great mind. He has some really good influences. He's been around Jeff Hafley, been around Vic Fangio, been around Brian Flores. The Jaguars, simply put to me, have 2 future NFL head coaches on their staff, and I don't remember when's the last time that you can say that. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. Please make sure to download, subscribe at YouTube and on all podcast platforms, and follow us at Jaguars on SI on social media, such as Facebook and Twitter.